Now we are in the session of regional guidelines, policies, and regulatory frameworks. And with us, we have, in place of Dr. Ali Simba, Executive Secretary of EACO, we have Juma Ooro, who is the Chairperson for EACO Work Group number 07, which is e-waste management and green ICT. Warm welcome, Dr. Ooro, and the floor is yours. Wonderful to have you with us. Now, 1 second, you seem to be muted. Speak again and see if it works.
Are you hearing me now?
Now, loud and clear. Thank you.
I'm asking if I can share my screen, because it's not giving
Yes,
me
please.
opportunity to share.
We are not in this room right now, so we have plenty of time because we are still, so you can just, we are still awaiting other speakers to join backstage, so the floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, I can see the presentation is there.
Wonderful. So you let me know. We go.
Okay. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. My name is Juma Ooro. I work at the Communications Authority of Kenya, which is the ICT regulator in Kenya. I do chair the technical working group for Iaco on Ewaste and green ICTs. So today I will be representing the executive secretary of Iaco, who would have liked to be with us, but for circumstances beyond control, he's not able to be here today. So I'll be representing him, and I'll be going through a presentation that he had prepared. And I will ask you then to go to the next slide. So, okay. I'm not sure whether you have heard me. Go to next slide. Thank you. So, Iaco is the East African organization, East African Communications Organization, and this is an organization for ICT regulators, service providers, and many other stakeholders in the ICT sector in the 6 East Africa community countries, that is Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, and South Sudan. Now, this organization is headquartered in Rwanda, and the main objective is to harmonize policies and regulations across the EACO region, what we call the EACO region, that is within the 6 countries that I've talked about, and also to be able to have concerted efforts in terms of various strategies to be able to grow the ICT sector. So, in terms of Ewaste, we do have a regional effort in managing Ewaste in this region, and that is under Iaco. We have a number of committees and technical working groups. So one of the working groups is on Ewaste and green ICTs, and that is working group 7, and that is the one that I also chair. And this working group actually is the one that is in charge of coming up with the strategies, or regional strategies for that matter, to manage Ewaste within this region. So I'll go straight to the challenges because some of our actions are premised on the challenges that we have in this region. And one of the challenges is, if you are still just on the initial slide, one of the challenges is on data. Do we have reliable data on Ewaste? If you want to solve a problem, then you need to know the extent of the problem. So one of the areas that we focus on is getting reliable data, and this is a challenge. We do not seem to have what we may call harmonized and reliable data within the region from which we can be able to make some decisions. And so these are one of the areas we are working on. The other challenge, now not seeing your screen well, I don't know what has happened. There is another screen that has been inscribed onto the earlier one. If you can just go back to the initial projection that I can see it. Simone, are we together?
Sorry. Now it should be there.
Yes, because I think there was, yes, it's now better. Then we do have the issue of a reliance on the informal sector in this region. So in terms of Ewaste management, there is a lot of informal sector in this. If you can go to the next slide. And that becomes a challenge because it's like we are doing most of the things in an ad hoc manner. Next slide, please. And then we do have cases of a lot of dumping of second-hand ICT equipment in the region, or electrical and electronics. And this poses a lot of challenges. They come through through way of, say, donations. But again, if their lifespan is very short, then they become US very quickly. And then we do generally have a lack of US management systems, and these are now what we are trying to put up in place with the regional initiatives. And of course, one of the major setbacks is the lack of awareness among the consumers and the members of the public about US. Its effects, its hazards, and even in terms of collection and all that. So we do have a lot of low-level awareness, and so these are some of the challenges we are facing in the region, and one of the reasons why we have a regional initiative. If you can move to the next slide. Then you will go to then some of those challenges are what have made us come up with a regional Ewaste management strategy, because then we realize that we have to approach this matter in a concerted manner as a region. So in 2017, under Iaco, we developed a regional Ewaste management strategy. And this strategy is a 5-year strategy, which is coming to an end next year. So we are going to come up with another strategy. And the strategy has got a theme of having zero negative impacts of US in this region by the end of this strategy. And the strategy has a number of goals and number of pillars. If you can go to the next slide so that I can quickly run through the 5 pillars of the strategy. And one of the pillars is on legal policy and regulatory frameworks, because we realize that this is one area that is lacking in the region. We do not have policies, the legal structures, and the regulatory frameworks, and the ones that are there may not be adequate. So this is one area this strategy is focusing on coming up with, so that all the 6 countries can be at the same level in terms of this. The second pillar of the strategy is the infrastructure for US management, where we are talking about the collection, talking of the transportation, and also the recycling. So these are systems, infrastructure that can enable us manage e-waste. So it's also focusing on that. And one of the goals is to have a regional facility that can be able to handle all e-waste within the region. The third pillar is on resource mobilization. This is where we are talking about the number of things that activities we want to undertake. How do we get the resources to be able to do them? How do we get resources, for example, to be able to have e-waste recycling facilities? So that pillar focuses on that. The next slide, the fourth pillar is where we are talking about the institutions and the coordination of e-waste management strategy. So here you will find later that we have created certain institutions, both at the national and the regional level, where at the national level we have the national steering, e-waste management steering committees, and regional level we also have a similar organ so that we can have some good coordination in terms of e-waste management. The last pillar is on capacity building and research and monitoring and evaluation. So here is where we are building capacity on e-waste. Here is where we are doing the research on e-waste and also monitoring and evaluation. And this is where we are also doing awareness on e-waste. So those are the 5 pillars of this regional strategy. Next slide. The next slide is now the guidelines and the policies and regulatory frameworks that are existing currently. In 2019, we got some good assistance from GIZ, which enabled us to put in place some of these things, especially analyzing the gaps that we had in the policy and the laws, and also making proposals on how we can be able to bridge those gaps. And if you go to the next slide, I'll take you quickly through what are available in the next slide. Skip that one. What are available in 6 countries. So if you see out of the regional initiatives, we have countries that have come up with certain things. So like in Burundi, for example, we already have the National e-waste Steering Committee, and that brings together all stakeholders on e-waste so that they can coordinate the management of e-waste within that country. We still lack some things like e-waste data, the lab data in Burundi, and as you will see later, we are working with ITU to create this. And e-waste awareness we have been done to some extent, and in March 2019, we also had a regional e-waste awareness workshop in Burundi to be able to create more awareness. Of course, they are also having other meetings and workshops on that. So next slide. The next one, if you look at Kenya, you will find that there is a national e-waste management strategy which was put in place in 2019, and we also have the National e-waste Steering Committee in Kenya. We do have regulations, draft regulations which are undergoing approval process on e-waste specifically, and we have also drafted extended producer responsibility regulations 2020 which are undergoing discussion. In Kenya, we do have e-waste guidelines that are being implemented by our National Environment Management Authority, and we do have about 3 e-waste recycling plants, and also collectors and transporters. In Kenya, we did an e-waste survey in 2016. It may have not been very comprehensive, but we have some data to that effect. Next slide. The other country is in Rwanda. In Rwanda, we do have e-waste regulation that was put in place in 2019, and they have done a lot of awareness across the countries, and they are also licensing, or they have licensed transporters and collectors of e-waste, and Rwanda probably has the biggest e-waste recycling facility being operated by EnviroSouth. Next slide. When you go to South Sudan has not made much progress, but they are really doing a lot to be able to be at the same level with the other countries. but they still don't have any laws, no guidelines existing, no facilities for now. But they are putting together their stakeholders so that they can be able to start formulating some of these things. The next slide is Tanzania. Tanzania just put in place an US regulations this year, and they have a national steering committee in place, and also the National Bureau of Statistics have got some statistics on US. They have done some surveys, two of them, and there is one certified US facility that is called Chilambo. I think they are building a bigger facility now for recycling of US. And I think the last one is Uganda. The next slide. Uganda also have got national steering committee in place. Uganda have got an US policy. They have also an US strategy. They have US guidelines. So they have made a lot of strides in this. They are currently reviewing their policy. And Uganda recently put in place an Ewaste collection center. Yeah, that is helping now with the collection of e-waste. They do not have a recycling facility as such, but I believe that will be something they are going to work on soon. So that summarizes what is in place in terms of e-waste in these countries. If you can quickly move to the next slide. I don't know whether you skipped a slide. You just go back one slide. Yes, so yeah, you're correct. So those are the issues and the status of the e-waste management within the region. So as I say, we are approaching e-waste as a region, and some of the bottlenecks we are having are the financial resources, and we are working a lot with various organizations to be able to get funding for most of these activities, and also there is a slow pace of putting in place the relevant laws, regulations, policies, and standards on e-waste, and generally the low awareness of e-waste in this region. So these are the areas we are working on currently. If you can move to the next slide. So way forward. So we are looking forward to continuing to implement the regional strategy, which is coming to an end next year, and we are going to come up with another one to be able to push us for the next 5 years. And we are implementing most of this. Currently, we are having two projects. One project is in Tanzania, which is about reducing e-waste, and it's about the transboundary movement of e-waste. So we are going to look at how e-waste comes through into Tanzania, where they come through, and what volumes, and how they are treated. So that is a project that is being done under Prevent Alliance, European Alliance body, which will go until next year. We also do have a project that is being funded and coordinated by ITU, International Telecommunication Union, and this one is on the regional US data. So we are hoping at the end of that project we are going to have harmonized data across the region, and what we will call a baseline that everybody will be able to reference on matters of e-waste. Of course, we are doing a lot in terms of public-private partnerships so that we can be able to have sustainable e-waste management frameworks and policies and guidelines. And of course, we are looking forward to lobbying all these six governments of the 6 countries so that the government can actually be able to support the coming up of the laws and the regulations and the standards and the frameworks that can enable us manage e-waste better in the country. So I think that probably should be the last page. You can move to the next slide. I think we are at the end. So that is what Iaco is doing in this region. If you can move to the next slide in case there is anything. But I don't think that it should be the end of it. Iaco is working on e-waste in a concerted manner, the 6 countries, so that we can be able to pool our efforts together and be able to have better management of e-waste for purposes of the environment. Thank you very much, and I'll be looking forward to any questions that may arise. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Juma Ooro, for that extensive presentation of the regional efforts. It is great. I mean, you started already then. The strategy was done and effective from 17 to 18, and then now it's going to be revised and redone. Do you feel that within all those 5 pillars you mentioned that we're reaching the targets, the objectives that we've had for those 5 pillars, or do you see some pillars that are definitely stronger or some that are definitely weaker? What do you see? We have the policies, the infrastructure, the resource mobilization, the coordination and alignment and then capacity building and research.
Thank you, Simone, for that question. Actually, we just did a review of the strategy and looked at the status of the strategy or implementation of the strategy. That was just at the end of last year. And I must tell you that from our assessment, we have actually covered over 70% of what we have planned to do. I can tell you we have made a good strides in terms of policy and laws, because when we started, I think it's only Uganda that had a policy and Kenya that had guidelines. But you can see now, even we have Rwanda with regulations, Tanzania and Uganda have even gone ahead to have other regulations. So we have made a lot of strides in terms of the Pillar 1 on policy. We have also made quite a lot of strides in terms of the second pillar, because this is about infrastructure. By the time we started, Rwanda did not have a US recycling facility. Now they have the biggest in the region under Envirosa. Tanzania have just put up another big one. They had one which was small, but now they have a bigger one. So I think that area we are also making strides. But we still have left, we are left with having one regional facility that can handle all US fractions. So that is something that we still have to work on. In terms of the third pillar on resource mobilization, I can tell you we have done a lot, because we have been supported by GIZ and also ITU now, and through Prevent Alliance. I don't know, but I can say to the tune of almost 1 million US dollars, more than one. No, I mean one. Yes, about over one. Let me say over 700,000 US dollars. So I don't know. In that side, I believe we have done well. In terms of Pillar 4 on the institutions, we have done very well, because all the countries except South Sudan, which just joined us recently, have got national e-waste steering management committees, and we have a regional e-waste management committee. So we have put in place that. In terms of the Pillar 5 research, I think we have not done so well, but at least Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda have already done some research, but we now want to do one for the whole region. So, and the other thing that we are still left with there is trying to mainstream what do you call it? Mainstream the e-waste curriculum in education, our education curriculum. So that is what we are also left with there, and also to come up with a PRO within the region. So I think in terms of performance, we have tried. But we are still looking forward to do more and partner with the other stakeholders. Thank you. I'm not sure, Simone, if you are together with us. I think I just responded to your question.
So I should be back. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you now. I think I responded to the issue you raised.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. And as you say, there's a lot of legislation in place. Do you feel that the enforcement is also in place in terms of budgeting? I know in general environmental issues are not highly prioritized in many countries, which also falls down on the enforcement. What do you see happening on that side?
Yes, I must say that in terms of enforcement, yes, the budgets may not be quite there because, as you say, most countries may have not prioritized US. It's like something that is just coming up recently. But I can say that even in our strategy, one of the things that I may have not talked about is that we need to set up an Ewaste fund within the region and within all the countries so that US can be given some more focus in terms of finances. But I can tell you that enforcement is still weak, both because we do not have all the laws that we require, but again, because not a lot of funding is still has been set aside on US in all the countries. I know in Kenya there's a bit of enforcement because we have some US guidelines. And in Rwanda, we have got regulations. I am sure they are doing a lot of enforcement. But as you say, and as I have just indicated, finances or limited finances also hinders the enforcement function. But it's something that we want to push through with our government. If every government can set up a US fund specifically to be able to manage issues of US. Thank you.
Yes, I believe it goes along with all the solid waste management issues, since it all falls under the same type of enforcement also with. But yes, we need more, and we're happy to pushing from your side. How do you feel now? We have this e-waste strategy and Iaco that you're representing, and we have reached, like you said, around 70% of the first objectives in the strategy. Of course, we would love for it to be more than 100. How can we speed this up now? How can we strengthen the collaboration between the countries and between the different bodies in the countries and actors? You talked about public-private partnerships also. We have many companies working all over the region, of course. How can we do this faster? Do you have any ideas, like we should do this or we should do that?
Yes, I think in terms of that, we still have to strengthen our concerted efforts in managing US. But one thing that we would want to do in this region is to have a PRO, whether at the level of the national governments or at the region, because we realize that there are so many players doing so many things on US differently. And so they are not talking to each other. So we think that to help us also manage this, if we can have a regional PRO, if not in every country, you see that will enhance our engagement in terms of knowing who is doing what, and then we are able to pool our resources together so that we don't end up with situations of a lot of duplication when actually we could approach this in one. So PRO is one of our focus areas that we think we need to have in place in the next few months or at most 1 year, so that we can be able all to speak together in one voice in terms of the players in this area. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we have a poll, and we also have a new speaker. Thank you so much, Juma Ooro. And to follow up on that, if everybody goes to the right-hand side to the poll, we have a question there. In your country, because we have people from all countries here, or many countries, do you feel that the enforcement of laws are done properly, like enough? Is it yes, or you feel no, or I don't know? Kindly go into the poll, choose an answer, and submit your vote. So we will soon do the results of that.